Hi, everybody. My name's Frank, and I'm an alcoholic. This is it. This is the Saturday night banquet speaker Mike Denny birthday meeting. I mean, this is the meeting. This is it. So this guy better be good. I have never in my, my experience in the program been so supported to speak. And and when I say supported, I stand up here on the shoulders of like 20, 30 people that were involved in getting me to Laughlin and to this meeting and to speaking tonight. And I stand on these volunteers' shoulders who aren't here. One of them happens to sit right next to me is Mike Denning. And on this night, in 1997? 87. Sorry, I shortchanged you 10 years. We're gonna have a recount after the meeting. But in 1987, on this date, Mike Denny came to us, and he's 27 years sober tonight. I want to give him a hand. I can't tell you what a gentleman he is. This guy is great. This guy is gold, man, and he helped me get here, and it's just been amazing to be set up to have come to this meeting tonight. This has been such a great roundup for me. I want to welcome everyone to the 30th annual Tri-State Roundup. If you're new and you think I'm moving funny, you're seeing things. My tremors just stopped. What do you need, a drink or something, No, I kid the newcomer. I mean, I have 2 progressive diseases. My sobriety date is December 20th, 1982. That is, they say there are no big deals in the program, I think a birthday is a big deal, and so that's been a long time between drinks, But that was in 1998. I was diagnosed with a second progressive disease, and it's Parkinson's. And Parkinson's is the least of what is wrong with me. It's really a funny story. It's like the way I was diagnosed with this. I mean, they say don't sit next to me when I'm eating soup. There was no soup during the banquets at this convention. But it's funny how I got diagnosed with Parkinson's. It's kind of a funny story. I'll tell it real quick. I was given, I had to go see, I was given a neurologist to see. I was given the name of a neurologist. A neurologist is the type of doctor you have to go see if you may have Parkinson's. It's a neurologist that's the specialty that treats it. And they gave me this guy's name on a referral sheet. And I was sure, I looked at it 2 or 3 times. I couldn't believe, I thought, there's no other way to pronounce this word, this name. There was only one pronunciation. And his name was Dr. J. Jerkowitz. I looked at this and I thought, this has got to be a joke, you know. This is somebody playing a trick on me, an insurance company or something, you know. So I had to call up and confirm that this guy is world-renowned, man. He went to the Einstein Medical School in the Bronx, and he is world-renowned. He's a world-renowned neurologist, and his name is Dr. J. Jerkowitz, you know. I mean, if that's your last name, you have to be a Parkinson's doctor. There's nothing else you can do, you know. I mean, that was just amazing, you know, God's sense of humor. It's just it's a phenomenal thing. So I went to see him, and I had this appointment, and I walked in, and he's never met me before, you know. He says, "What's up?" And I said, "Well, my hand moves when I'm not moving it. So why don't you tell me what's up?" He didn't know me from Adam. You know what he says? First thing out of his mouth, he says, "How does it respond to alcohol?" So I guess what it is, my hand needs a drink, you know. Hell, I could have told him that, you know. He charged me $500 for that appointment. Parkinson's will never define who I am. It's an inconvenience, you know, but Parkinson's will never define who I am. And I'm doing pretty good. I'm 15 years into this thing. I'm supposed to be in a wheelchair by now. You know, and I walk around, I'm doing fine. I'm dealing with it, you know, I'm dealing with it with the program and the steps and the fellowship and the family I have. But alcoholism, on the other hand, sources, you know, who I am and what I do every day of my life. Alcoholism is a progressive illness that makes Parkinson's look like, you know, a walk in the park, man. I mean, this is a serious disease we have, and we come here a hopeless state of mind and body. And we laugh, you know, we have a good time. We're not a glum lot. But we are clear about the seriousness of our condition. And if you knew, you're not crazy, I do move funny. I dance while I talk. You know, there's a line, it took me 2 years. If you knew, we've got a book, it's called The Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm sure you have seen a copy. I don't have one up here, but I mean, I want you to know that, you know, this book has, its first 164 pages is the program of Alcoholics Anonymous in our big book, in our book. It's the instructions for the program, man. And it took me 2 years to read those 164 pages. I mean, when I came in, I wanted nothing to do with the spiritual aspect of the program. There's only one aspect to the program, and that's a spiritual one. I mean, you know, it's, I was in trouble, you know. I drink well. But I wanted nothing to do with the G word when I got here. And anything that dealt with God and spirituality, I thought, I'm not gonna deal with that. And it took me 2 years to read the book, you know, the first 164 pages, because of this mental block I had with the God thing. But there was a section of the book in the beginning, being before chapter 1. It's called The Doctor's Opinion. And this was like a foreword. And I could read that. And I read it, and I got very excited. Because there was a line in there. There were several lines that excited me. But there was one line in there. And the line said, any message that is going to hold the attention of this class of drinker must have depth and weight. And I thought, man, that's cool, you know. I thought, I'm all about being deep and heavy, you know. That's me, you know. You want to hold my attention, you better have depth and weight, you know. But I mean, I love that. I love that line. And it was a message of depth and weight. Well, there were many of those. And what happened was I share that with you. Let's see, why did I share that with you? It had to do. It was something I was saying about the you know. Oh, I know what it was. I was asked to tell this story, and I wanted to introduce the story. So you know, that is the first part of the book that I was aware of. It was The Doctor's Opinion, and in it there was this line about depth and weight. So messages of depth and weight is what my story is. One of the things, you know, yesterday we had a topic on the panel, and the topic was, you know, what compels me, what keeps me coming back, what keeps me coming here, what is it about the program that makes me want to just, you know, it's insidious. It's a crazy relationship I have with AA because, you know, sometimes I just hate it, and I hate going to it, and I go to it anyway. I had a sponsor when I was new. His name was Cubby. And Cubby used to go and he'd speak all over the place in Los Angeles. And I used to have to take him to speak, and he was a funny little guy. And I would pick him up, and he'd say, I hate these meetings, you know. He'd say, they asked me to speak at this thing, and I'm busy, and I've got things to do, and I don't want to get in the car and go. And he couldn't drive, you know, so I had to drive him, and I'd drive him to the meeting, and he'd say, these meetings, I'm sick of these meetings, man. They do the same thing every time I show up, and these people, they don't care about me, and they don't know me, and I don't know them, and I don't want to be there, and these meetings are, you know, pathetic. And he gets into the room and he sits down, and they call him up to the podium, and he tells his story, and then we get in the car and we're going home at night, and he says, don't you just love AA? Isn't that the most wonderful thing in the world, man? This program is such a gift, you know, and it is. It's like when I was asked to speak here tonight, this is why I told you that. Now it's all coming back to me now. Is that, you know, I was asked to speak here tonight, and, you know, truly, there was a movie that came out about 20 years ago. I'm going to date myself. And it was called Wayne's World. And it was a guy, and every time something good would happen to the guy, he'd say, I'm not worthy, you know. He'd say, I'm not worthy, you know. And I'm not worthy to be here. I mean, it is such an honor to be asked to come and participate at this meeting this weekend. And it is such an honor that it's one I'll never pay back. But it is, I've got to remember, you know, that speaking is probably the least significant commitment I could have in AA. I mean, speaking is not necessary to have a meeting. You don't need a speaker to have a meeting. You know, you may need, if you got my morning meeting, you need a coffee pot. You need to make some coffee. You need to have a literature person there. You need somebody to collect the money. You need somebody to have a format. You know, there are commitments there that are important, and they're the commitments that you have to come back to each week, every week, and then reduce your isolation. You know, these are the commitments that save your life. Speaking, I mean, Mike called me up 6 months ago, asked me, he says, listen, I'll pay for you, you know, I'll get you to Laughlin, and I will make sure that you have everything you need. Can you speak for us? And you show up and run your mouth about yourself for half an hour, and then get the hell out of town, you know? I mean, what kind of commitment is that? You know? I'm sitting there, I'm going, sure, I can do that, you know? I mean, I've seen what Mike and Jeff and these people I was with all weekend have been doing. They've been working their tails off, man. This stuff doesn't happen by accident. You don't get, you know, like 50s music playing in the background with decorations like this. And I mean, it's just, you know, at the beginning of this meeting, we had everyone stand that was a volunteer. And I just got to tell you, I stand up here on the shoulders of these people, and there are hundreds of them. And what they're doing is 1,000 times more significant than anything I have to say tonight. And I just want to tell you that, and I want to thank you. I want to thank those volunteers. Anyway, when I got to AA, I was useless. I was a useless human being. I was like a dog on a freeway. That's the way I call it. I describe it as a dog on a freeway. I was a road hazard. I had no business being anywhere. You know, I was just useless. I was a useless human being. I mean, there was nothing you could do with me, and you know, I lived in a very hostile world when I got to AA. When I started my first meeting, the world was a very hostile place. It was a dog-eat-dog affair. I saw it as such. I thought I was out to get mine before you took it away from me, and I was convinced that all you were about was taking mine away from me. That's all you wanted to do, and I didn't trust you. And I don't know why I was so paranoid, because I didn't have anything. I don't know what I thought you were going to take from me, but I mean, I was convinced that that's what you were about, and I had nothing to give. And if I had had anything, I wouldn't have been interested in giving it. I was useless. That renders one useless, that kind of terror, that outlook, that perspective. Anything I see myself to be, anything anything I have that's of any value, which is an interesting concept, because I've learned through the program, I learn more every year that, you know, stuff is, you know, the best things in life are not things. You know, but anything I have that's of any value, but most especially any use. Anything I can do for another human being, any service I can perform on this planet, anything I have, anything I give, any use, any love I demonstrate is a result of Alcoholics Anonymous in my life. It's a result of the fellowship loving me and introducing me to this book. And this book showed me these 12 steps. And the first 11 words of the 12th step are having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. Cubby used to say, it was the only thing I was working on. He says it's worded that way on purpose. It's not a result, it's not some result. It is the result of these steps. And it's the only thing I'm doing here. Is to find this spiritual experience, this change in my perception. And that has happened for me, and it's a gift I'll never pay back. And so it is an honor to be here. And it is a message of depth and weight, you know. I mean, anyway, I was asked to tell this story. I have you know, when I say anything I do to be of service, you know, I came in here, I was, like I say, I had nothing, I was useless. That was 31 years ago, and 27 years ago, my son was born. Now, I knew nothing of being a parent. I still, to this day, don't know how that, I know how it happened. But I don't know how to raise a child. I don't know how to be a parent, and I didn't come here to learn to do that. I came here to learn how not to black out when drinking anymore, you know. And what happened was I've been taught, you know, I became an adequate parent, you know. And my son, who is 27 today, even if he never drinks or uses, I've got more time than him, you know. It's just a thought, you know. We have a great relationship, though, and he's my best friend. And he taught me this story, and I, too, like Cubby, hate speaker meetings. I can't, I go to speaker meetings, and for me to sit there when I was new, for me to sit in a room and let, one guy talk about himself for half an hour, I might as well just, shoot me now, you know. I can't handle that, you know. So, I hate speaker meetings unless I'm the speaker. Then I have a pretty good time, you know. But because of it, if you're like me and you can't stand that, I can tell you my whole story in about 2 minutes. I'm going to tell you this story. This story was given to me. I was asked to share it tonight, and it's something that has become an important part of my talk. So I want to not share it. But my son taught this to me when he was 5. He came to live with me. His mom went back out behind this disease. And his mother was, I was just thinking about Polly Pistol was the speaker last night, and she knew, she knew my situation back then, and it was 27 years ago, actually, Polly. You said it had been over 20 years, you were right. And Polly and Dave were so supportive of our situation, but there's just, there's just so much you can do. And anyway, my son came to live with me when he was 5, and I had to learn how real quick to be a single father and raise this kid. And, my friend Jimmy Woods, he was a friend of mine, lived across town. He had a daughter who had been thrust upon him, and he had to learn how to raise his daughter. So we get on the phones together every Saturday morning. Jimmy and I get on the phone together, and our kids would be up watching these Saturday morning cartoons, and we'd be on the phones trying to figure out how to make pancakes or something. And Jimmy and I are talking, and our kids are watching my son's favorite Saturday morning cartoon when he was 5. It was 7:30 on Saturday mornings, and it was the Roadrunner cartoon. Yeah. And that's the one that go, me. Well, Jimmy and I were sitting there, and we would watching my son. He was watching his daughter. We were watching this Roadrunner cartoon, and we decided this must have been written by one of us. This cartoon, it was amazing. We were blown away by it every time we make a discovery, and so I'm going to tell you, this is my whole story. All right. In this cartoon, there's this coyote. His name is Wiley, and it's Wiley Coyote, and he is the first one opens up on this coyote having a very bad day. He's irritable, restless, and discontented. The coyote is not happy, He's having a very bad day, and on this day, and this is one of the earliest episodes, he catches this bird. He catches this Roadrunner. He catches him, and he eats him. And this bird, it's like Bugs Bunny Day, man. It's amazing. He has an immediate sense of ease and comfort. By eating this bird, it's a spiritual experience. Everything changes. It fixes him immediately. It is a miracle. It's like Bugs Bunny Day, It's like he can't believe it. So now this coyote dedicates himself to spending the rest of his life buying Acme rockets. And he's going to strap himself on board, He's going to buy rocket-powered roller skates. He's going to buy, huge human slingshots. He's going to break every bone in his body multiple times. He's going to run his head into the side of mountains and fall 500 feet to his death on the off chance that he gets one more bite of Roadrunner. Now, I don't know about you, but that's my story. There's nothing more to say about it, man. There's nothing more to say about it, man. It's just that, that's my story. That's the entire story of my using. So if you can't stand speaker meetings like I can, then you can leave right now. I mean, it's like, 'cause there's nothing more I'm going to tell you. That's about as profound and as deep and as heavy a message as I can come up with. That is a message of depth and weight. I mean, that cartoon, Jimmy and I, we continue to watch it. We figured this thing's not for kids, We had to turn it off. It got way too serious. We had discussion meetings over this. Every episode. Every episode would end the same way. This coyote would be beat to hell, He'd have a black eye, and he'd have a bandage on his head, and he'd have his arm in a sling, and his leg in a cast, and he'd have a crutch, and he'd be on like one roller skate, And he'd be going after this bird, and he was all beat up, and be the very end of the episode, and the bird would move, and he'd be going by on his roller skate, and he'd go over the edge of the cliff, and he'd look down where he's going to fall to his certain death. And he looks down and he pauses and he defies gravity for about 2 seconds. Just long enough to look at the camera and smile, this big smile. And then he whips out a sign. And the sign says, "Super Genius." I mean, that's heavy, man. That's not for kids. I mean, you can't explain that, I had to go to Cubby with that, when Cubby said, what Cubby said? Cubby said, he said, when what it does to you outweighs what it does for you, you'll give it up. And what he said he said, you can't spin one side of a coin. Every time you spin that coin, you're looking at possible heads or possible tails. And one's pain and one's pleasure. And you never know which one's going to come up. But that's what you're dealing with when you're dealing with the first step, with being powerless over alcohol. But let me tell you something. What it did for that coyote was so, it was a message of depth and weight, man. You take that drink and it just works. It works. It's so elusive and it's so wonderful. It's such a certain spiritual experience. It worked so well that he was a genius for chasing it. It didn't matter what it did to him. It didn't matter he was falling 500 feet to his death with every bone in his body broken. It was like, we laugh about it now. But I tell you, there was a while when I was in AA that I wouldn't meet anybody named John anymore. Because every Johnny I knew died. They all dead. There was a John Forrestal, there was a Johnny Watts, there was John Siegel, Johnny Lichty. Every Johnny I met, and these are great guys. These are guys who are friends of mine. They're good friends of mine. They had sponsors, they had program, and they didn't work the first step that day, and they decided it was a good idea to go out and chase it again. But they thought they were geniuses, And what they did was they took that drink, and it worked so well, It just worked so well. And so, Anyway, that's my Roadrunner story. Now I'll tell you the real one, and I'll try to make it as short and simple and painless as possible. I'm from Beaumont, Texas originally. Originally, I come from Beaumont, Texas. Beaumont is 90 miles east of Houston, and it's about 4 miles west of the Louisiana state line. And the reason I mention that is that when I was 14 in 1967. So you don't have to do the math on that. I'm 61 years old. Okay, I mean so you can stop thinking about it, you know. But I am. When you were 14 in the state of Texas in 1967, you could get a legal driver's license. You could drive a car legally in the state of Texas at the age of 14. In 1967. So my dad had given me his old work car, and I got it was a '58 Chevy Del Rey, and I'm in Beaumont, Texas. I'm 14 years old. It's 1967. All of those things are significant to the story. And I'm 14 years old, and because I have a car, and it runs, and it's a pretty cool car. I mean, a '58 Chevy Del Rey was a pretty cool. It was an awesome-looking car, you know. And because I had this car, I got to hang with guys that were older than me. These guys were 16 to 18. I was 14. There was 6 of them. There was one of me, and we called ourselves the Magnificent Seven of Beaumont, you know. And we get together on Friday nights, and we'd pile into this car, and we would drive 5 miles over the state line into Vinton, Louisiana. And there was a liquor store there on the side of the road. I can see it as if I saw it yesterday. It's like a Polaroid in my mind, because this liquor store became attached to a very significant spiritual awakening for me. And it flashed Jack's Packet Liquor in red. I thought it was like, it might as well have been like Vegas, you know, like the sign out in front of the casino here. I mean, it was like, this is great. And we would have these, and be the Magnificent Seven on Friday night in that '58 Chevy, and we'd pull up, and they had, in Louisiana, everything's underwater, you know. So what they do is they have a lot of oysters there. So they save the shells, and they cover their driveways in oyster shells. So the oyster shells keep the driveway dry. And it's cheaper than gravel. And we pull in, and these tires had a certain crackle sound when they rolled over those oyster shells. And I can hear the tires crackling now. And I've never been to a liquor store in Louisiana that didn't have a drive-through window. They all have drive-through windows. They're like Jack in the Box or McDonald's. You just drive up. You don't have to get out of the car in Louisiana to get booze, you know. So we drive around back of this store, and there's the drive-through window. We pull up, and there was a guy with about 300 pounds. He had no hair on his head, and a cigar hanging out of his mouth. And he'd say, "What can I do for you boys?" And I'd say, we buy this Boone's Farm apple wine. We buy Boone's Farm strawberry wine. We get long neck pearl beer. We had enough. I mean, we weren't class drinkers here. I mean, we're from Beaumont, you know, and we'd stack up, and we'd buy all this food. My favorite was for $1.59. You could get a huge green gallon bottle of Bally High wine. It was amazing, you know. It was like a huge amount of wine for that much money, and it had this little hula girl on the label. She was the sexiest thing I'd ever seen. I mean, it was just amazing. I remember I thought it was a marketing ploy. You drink that whole bottle. That's how you say, "I'm very high. I'm Bally High." Do you want to be Bally High? You know, baseball been badly good to me. And we would buy that wine, you know, and then we'd have enough money left over to get one person into Showtown, USA drive-in movie theater. So we'd stash 6 guys in the trunk of this car. And the rear end be dragging on the ground, making sparks. And take her, this 14-year-old kid driving this car with all this booze in the back seat. You know, it's like, But that was my summer of love, man. That was where it all began. And I got to tell you, one of the things that, the two things in Texas when I was a kid growing up, and you can ask Polly if this wasn't her experience, was, two things. It was football and Jesus, in that order. I mean, that was the two things. And I was told that this drinking this Bally High wine on the weekends at this drive-in movie theater was not a good thing to be doing. That was not what I was supposed to be doing. It wasn't I could tell anybody. And I thought it was very conflicting, because when I drank this stuff, it was amazing. It was just like it says in the book, It was just a miracle. I mean, I felt a part of. I felt like I could talk to these guys. I felt like I could talk to the girls that we'd see out there. They're driving. I thought, this is how you become an adult. This is how you're an adult, is you drink. They've been lying about this demon rum, This demon rum is great, man. It is a miracle. This is how I'm going to live the rest. This is the answer I've been looking for, So I chased it with a vengeance for the next several years. But I mean, that was my introduction. And I went to, when I was 18 years old, I went to New York City. I moved to New York City. I took a job driving cab on a night shift at Bell Garage in South Bronx, on Fordham Road, and I worked my way through school, driving cab and going to school in New York, and chasing bigger and better highs, let's say. And when I was 21, my father died. I hadn't talked to my father for 3 years. I wasn't planning on that happening. My parents did not drink, and my father died of a heart attack. My sister called me. She was 6 years older than me. She was the valedictorian of the high school, and she was on a scholarship to go to University of Cologne in Germany. It was a Fulbright scholarship. She was a scholar. They're still wondering what the hell happened to me. She was walking the straight and narrow, and she calls me up and she says, your dad died. You got to come home and bury your father. And so I did that, and 4 years later, I was 25, she was 31, she had a 2-year-old son, and he was the only member of the family that would still talk to me. And she contracted a type C hepatitis. She came in and out of a coma over 2 years, and I went home and watched my mother take her off life support, and I held her son at her funeral, and I watched my mother, bury her daughter, and I swore off God. I decided, if there's a God, this makes no sense to me. I'm the one that's supposed to be dead here, not her. And I just thought I didn't want anything to do with spirituality of life or of the program, and I started to chase my disease with vengeance. In 1980, I moved to Los Angeles, and I had a job that I made a lot of money in a little bit of time. And in 1982, it was the Thanksgiving of '82. It was a month before Christmas. At that time of year, it's free, man. They're giving it away, And it was Thanksgiving. It was Thanksgiving before Christmas in 1982. I'll never forget. I was a blackout drinker. Every time I drank, I'd black out. I would black out for 3 or 4 days, and then I'd come to. And I remember it was a Thursday, and it was a week before Thanksgiving, and there was going to be a party, a holiday party, and everybody was going to go, and you had to get ready to go to the party. You couldn't go to the party, conscious. You had to get ready to go to the party, you had to. And so we started getting ready about 3 in the afternoon, And the party's not till 10 o'clock that night, and we're getting ready to go to the party, and so that was the last thing I remember. I pulled down these 2 water glasses. I was staying with a girlfriend, and she was out of town, and all she had to drink was this Tanqueray gin. I hated gin, but that's what she had, and that's what we were going to get ready to go with. So I poured these 2 water glasses full of gin, and I remember the gin pouring, but I don't remember drinking it. I mean, here it was, and the next thing I knew, it was Monday morning. I'm lying face down on the southeast corner of Hollywood and Vine. My face is stuck to the sidewalk. My hand has a scar on it to this day where it was stuck there. People are walking over me and looking at me like I used to look at the bums on the subway. And I thought, how did I get here? I didn't even remember taking the first shot. Man, I mean, this is nothing but pain. There was no pleasure in that, And it was my bottom, and I didn't know it at the time. But, I was terrified. I came to on that street corner, and, Cubby used to have this line. He'd say he felt like a scream looking for a mouth. And that was my scream was, this isn't me. You're not seeing me. These people were walking over me and looking at me, and they thought, what they were thinking. I knew what they were thinking. I knew what I thought when I saw me. And there was a mirror being held up, and I thought, I can't say anything to them, but what I want to say to them is that they got the wrong guy. The guy you're looking at is not, this isn't me. There's been a mistake, I'm not supposed to be here. I'm not supposed to be looking like this or this lost, or I'm not supposed to be this dog on the freeway, And I was useless. And back then, they used to have these black boxes on the street. You put money in them, you could make a phone call. They were called payphones. In LA, I have to explain that, And so I had to make a phone call. I had to. I was terrified. I didn't know what I was going to do. And there was a payphone there, and I was looking in my pocket for some money. I found 37 cents, and I found this piece of paper, and the paper was a piece of yellow legal pad torn off at the corner, and it said Michael, and it had a phone number on it, and it was written in very distinct block letters. I recognized the handwriting. It was this guy Michael, who I had seen about 3 months before that at another party at a bar, and he had been drinking this Perrier. And I walked up to him, I said, what are you drinking a Perrier for? Let me buy you a drink. He said, no, he said, I hadn't had a drink in 1.5 years. I said, well, that's terrible, man. Why would you do that to yourself, Let me buy you a drink, He said, no. He said, I've been going to AA. Well, that was the end of that conversation that night. I don't talk to this guy anymore. What a buzzkill, Jeez. So anyway, he gives me his phone number, I guess. In my blackout that night at that party, he had written his number down, and like I said, I used to bartend with this guy, so I knew his handwriting, and I knew who it was, and it was just amazing, So here I am waking up that morning, and I'm looking through I'm looking for some money, and I find his number, and there's a payphone hanging there, and I go over and I called him up, and he picks up the phone, and he right away recognizes who, I said, hey, Michael. He said, Frank. He said, yeah. I said, what's up? And I said, well, I need a drink, but I don't want to get drunk today. That's what I told him. I remember saying it. It was as if somebody else was saying it. I heard it, and I heard myself say that, and I thought, maybe I have a problem. We're the last to find out, So he said, where are you? And I told him, and he comes pulling up in his car, what must have been about 20 minutes, but it felt like 2 minutes to me. And he says, come in, and he takes me to my first meeting. Now, I knew nothing about this thing. I knew nothing about it. But I didn't feel like seeing anybody that morning, I'll tell you that. If you want to get a lot of attention in an AA meeting, show up looking like a newcomer, man. These people aren't going to leave you alone, I walked in there, I thought my friend Michael was the president of AA, Everybody wanted to know him. Everybody knew him. He said, your friend Michael sits here, why don't you sit next to him? Now, let me tell you something about a dog on a freeway. I'm terrified at this point, And I am living and the world is a hostile place, and I'm seeing it that way, and I'm belligerent, and I'm not trusting anybody or anything. I'm looking you square in the eye, and you better be shooting straight. Well, I'm going to, when you approach your dog on a freeway, he's going to run like a rabbit. These people were saying things. They were saying things that they better be telling the truth, They were saying things, like, we're glad you're here. And they'd say, your friend Michael sits here, why don't you sit next to him? And they'd say, this one guy asked me what I wanted in my coffee. And he was from Brooklyn, I could tell from his accent. So I thought I'd test him out. I said, I want a light, no sugar. That's the way they order it in Brooklyn, He went off to get that coffee. I told my friend Michael, I said, and it was amazing. It was amazing because, I didn't realize it until, it's always looking back in hindsight, that I realized why I was so compelled to stay in the room. I didn't want to see you people. I didn't want to be with you. I didn't want anybody in my face. But here I was in this meeting, and these people were like happy to see me, and it was kind of compelling. And it was like I didn't necessarily want to run away, but I didn't want to be there, and I didn't know what was going on. It kept me in the room. It kept me in the room. That's what kept me coming back. And so I was, my friend. This guy gone. I told my friend Michael, I said, I spent my last quarter calling you. This guy asked me what I want in my coffee. Can you get me a cup of coffee? He says, sure. And he said, I said, can you spot me a cup of coffee? He said, it's for free. He said the coffee was free. I was impressed. I was once again blown away. It was a message of depth and weight. And we laugh about that, but it's true. It was for me that morning. It was profound. That was profound. It wasn't about any big book that was read to me. It wasn't about, it was about just the simple act of love is that which hath no judgment. I wasn't judged there, and I couldn't believe it. And I wasn't. I was honestly, these people were telling the truth. When that meeting was over, there was a guy, he was halfway across the room. He had this Brooks Brothers suit on. He was dressed to the nines. He had a carnation in his lapel. I'll never forget it. And he was across the room, and he yells out to my friend. He says, Michael, don't go anywhere. I want to meet your new friend. And I thought, oh, my God. I thought the guy was a narc, I figured, okay, this is it. Somebody dropped a dime on me, And so I thought, okay, I gotta, And he comes over and he says, my name is Bob. I said, well, I'm Frank. Nice to meet you. This guy was dressed so nice. I thought, nobody dressed like that wants to talk to a guy like me, And he says, when's your next meeting? I said, there are others? I didn't know anything about this. And he says, yeah, there's one tonight at 7:30. It's over on Camden and Santa Monica, and your friend Michael's going to be there, and I'm going to be there. What are you doing? Why don't you meet us there? Now, what I have, plans? I couldn't really say no to that, So he's walking away, and he grabs his briefcase, and as he's walking towards the door, he stops, and he looks at his watch, and he says, wait a second. Checked his watch, and I thought, oh, here it comes. And the other shoe's about to drop. Here it comes. And he says, it's 2 o'clock now. That meeting's not till 7 o'clock tonight. He says, you're not going to drink between now and then, are you? I guess I took too long answering that question. Because he got 4 or 5 other guys together, and they took me out to a coffee shop called Figueroa's. They set me on the inside of the booth, and there was a sentinel going on for the next 4 hours until that meeting started. And what these guys explained to me was they said, listen, man, they said, all will be added unto you. If you just do this simple thing, we understand what number one is. We know what a priority is. You don't. You had lost track of your priorities. We understand what number one is. And we're number one to you right now. There's one thing you have to do, and that is not leave a meeting without knowing when and where your next meeting is, and you stay conscious between these meetings. That's all you got to do. And you let us handle the other 227,000 problems you have. We want you conscious, and we want you here. We're going to find out who you are. That is a message of depth. Wait, let me tell you. So, I'll never forget, the third meeting I went to that meeting that night, and then the next morning, my friend Michael, I stayed on his couch. I didn't have any place to stay. And he woke me up at 11 o'clock in the morning. He said, come on, he says, we got to go back to that noon meeting. And he took me to that meeting. And this is the second day, and I'm on the way to that meeting, and he tells me in his car, he says, I know you called me yesterday morning. He says, I'm sure you didn't have a drink yesterday between those two meetings. He said, now it's 11 o'clock in the morning. It's been 25 hours, man. That's a day. He says, you got a day. I started to cry, I had tears in my eyes. I thought I couldn't think of the last time. It scared me and it overwhelmed me all at the same time. I couldn't think of the last time I'd gone a day conscious. A day without something to turn my volume knob down. A day without chasing a roadrunner. A day of just one time, fixing. It was like it just scared me. It terrified me. But it was like it gave me about that much self-esteem, It gave me that much self-worth. I had some integrity because I had done something these guys had asked me to do. I walked up to that meeting. These people are there, same people as the day before. They recognized me. I saw them. And that's what they say around here. This is $1 million program. You get it a nickel at a time, And that's the way that worked for me. But that was what happened. And I got this one other story I'm going to share with you, and then let's dance, So I'm going to share this one other story, and I promise I'll get down. But this is a story that is about the steps working me. Like I said, it took me 2 years to read this book. It took me 2 years when I first came in, and I couldn't grasp, the God thing. I had to come to grips with that, and so I couldn't do that. But it didn't take me 2 years to work the steps. The steps worked me. By the time I had read about the steps in the book, they were in the past tense. It was, it was like looking. I realized that all these things had been done to me, and it was like I didn't have anything to do with it. I just showed up. I just showed up in the fellowship. And if you knew, I want to tell you this is how this works. And I'll give you an example. When I first came in, I couldn't participate. I wouldn't raise hands. I wouldn't raise my hand as a newcomer. I wouldn't hold hands at the end of a meeting. Very rarely did I let my back come off against the wall. My back was against the wall, and I wanted it there. And I just had a hard time participating. I hadn't taken any chips, and I was just hanging out at my friend Michael's house. And I was going to the meeting the next day. I wasn't drinking, but I was coming up on 90 days, and my friend Michael said, you got to take a chip, man. 90 days is a long time. Ask anyone with 89 days. 90 days is impossible, man. It's a long time. It is very painful, So he says, you got to take a chip. In 90 days, there's going to be plenty of people in a room with less time than that, and you got to take this chip. So Michael had convinced me to take a chip, so I was going to take my first chip. And I went to this meeting at noon on Yucca and Gower in Hollywood. I went out to this meeting, and it was a pretty big meeting. It was like maybe 200 people there, and it met every Wednesday. It was the only meeting that gave chips on Wednesday afternoons in Hollywood. So you had to get there early because it was a pretty big meeting. It was well attended, and you had to save a seat. if you're going to have a place to sit down. So I had to get there early to sit there. Now, at this meeting, at the front left, every Wednesday, like clockwork, there was a guy that sat on the front left, and his name was Irv Nemi. Now, Irv, when he got sober, Irv had over 30 years when I had 90 days, so he got sober like with the dinosaurs or something. I mean, this guy had been sober forever, and everybody knew Irv, and that was Irv's meeting. Irv was there every Wednesday. That's just who Irv was, and everybody knew who he was. I knew guys that knew Irv. You know, I didn't know Irv. I never talked to him. He had never talked to me. And he's walking one way, and I'm walking the other, and he stops, and he looks at me, and he said, "Hey, how you doing?" And I had just put my keys down to save a seat, and here's Irv Nemi asking me how I'm doing. And there's nobody else around. The guy's looking at me. And I'm thinking, this is like God asking me how I'm doing. I got to tell him the truth, you know. So I told him, I said, I'm pathetic. I'm not doing too good. He said, "Excuse me?" I said, "Yeah, I've been coming to these stupid meetings for 90 days, and I'm staying on my friend's couch, and nothing's getting any better. And, you know, I don't have any money. I used to deal drugs and bartend, and I can't do that anymore. My girlfriend, I still got a car, but I can't find my car. I lost it in a blackout. It took me 6 months to find my car. And if I found it, I couldn't drive it because my girlfriend's got the keys, and she's not, and she won't pick up the phone, and you know, and I'm coming to these stupid meetings. I'm doing what they're telling me to do, and nothing's getting any better, and my ass is falling off. And how are you?" Irv is not even looking at me. He's looking in the back of the room, this guy. He's just looking in the back of the room, and he says, "Do you know that guy back there?" And I turned and looked, and I said, "No." And he said, "Well, there was a guy in the back of the room." This is back when people used to smoke in meetings. And there was a guy in the back of the room, and he had like a 2-foot stack of aluminum ashtrays, and he's dropping them all over the place, you know. And he's balancing these ashtrays, and Irv says, you know, he says, he's got 2 minutes to put all those ashtrays out. He says, "Why don't you go give him a hand? Let's review this for a sec." I mean, by now, there's people listening to this, and I'm embarrassed. You embarrass me with 90 days, I'll kill you. You know? That's serious. You know, I was embarrassed. And Irv is, and I thought to him, you know what went through my head? It was the first time I'd ever had an intuitive thought, you know? I mean, one of the things that happens in AA is you work these steps and you claim you having had a spiritual experience as the result of these steps. You get that for yourself, and you're going to have some intuition. And you're going to know things that you never knew before. You're going to know how to handle situations that they used to blow your mind. And now you're going to be able to do these things. And so, you know, it's like, you know, I didn't know what to do. I was standing there. I wanted to reach out and touch Irv. You know, I wanted to break this guy's nose, you know. And I thought, I can't hit him, and I can't run. The door's behind me. I got to run for that door, but there's all these people standing around that I know, and they're watching. And I thought the only thing I got to do, I only had one other option. And it was like I had to take an opposite action. I had to surrender. I had to make a decision, man. And I made a decision. I went up to the guy with the ashtrays, and I said, you know, I'm supposed to help you with these stupid ashtrays. Where are they? Where are they? He says, "They're back in the kitchen." So I went back there, and I went back to the kitchen to get some ashtrays, and there was a guy back there with an army jacket on, and he had this Duncan purple butterfly yo-yo. Now, the significance of that is that when I was 12 years old in Beaumont, Texas, I won a Briggs & Stratton mini bike doing a yo-yo trick called Walk the Dog. Further than any other kid in my age group, I hadn't seen a yo-yo in 20 years, and it's like riding a bike, you never forget how. And this guy in the kitchen of this church with his Duncan butterfly yo-yo couldn't even make it go up and down, man. I mean, I thought that'll break your heart, you know, that'll break your heart. That's heartbreaking. You know, I went to him, I said, man, you can't do that. I said, this is a Duncan butterfly. Don't you know what you got here? Let me show you what you got here. I took that yo-yo I'm doing around the worlds and rocked the cradle. I could do a Star of Texas while it spun, man. And he said, that's amazing. He said, my name's Bill. I said, I'm Frank. He said, how you doing? I said, I'm glad you asked me. I said, I'm pathetic. And make a long story short, that guy gave me his business card. I called him that afternoon. I went to work for him the next day. I met my future business partner, which has led me to a career that has fed my face and raised my son for 25 years. Now, let me tell you, it took a year of me getting a cake at that same meeting. Me taking my year of cake and sitting next to the guy with the yo-yo, and he nudged me, and he says, you realize we would have never met if you hadn't gone to put out those ashtrays. What did Irv know? He knew what to do with a crazy newcomer that was in his face, this insane guy. And, you know, that's how we save each other's lives around here. I mean, there's so much, you know, for us to discover it. And it's such a wonderful gift, this program. And, you know, I have to tell you this. I was speaking in Fullerton about 6 months ago, and there was a guy. He had a motorcycle club, and he was in there, and he had been sober, and he takes off his jacket, and he comes up to me, and he says, I heard your CD, and I want you to know I love it, and these are the shirts I had made for my motorcycle club, and he unzips his leather jacket, opens it up, and in his shirt it says, what did Irv know? I mean, I saw that T-shirt. I thought, yeah, baby, yeah. I saw that T-shirt. I said, that's great. That's so cool. I mean, I said, you're the brilliant one to think of putting that on a T-shirt. I mean, that was great. What did Irv know? You know what I mean? There's one last thing I want to tell you, and then I'm gone. There was something Chuck C. used to say. He had it in his book, and it was that anything done as a means to an end is self-robbery. And Chuck C. said that is, there's a message of depth and weight in that. And I think, you know, it's something that, you know, it's something to you know, I mean, what it is it was like the first night that David spoke, you know, when he said, this kind of brings it home, when he said that he felt like it wasn't enough. You know, I mean, if I'm looking outside of me, you know, for something that I don't have yet, you know, then I'm broken. I'm broken. There's a hole in me, you know. And if I'm clear about how whole and complete and loved and truly brilliant and what a gift I am, if I'm clear about that, there's nothing more to fix. Only thing left to do is go out and give. The only thing left to do is go, there's nothing to be fixed because you're already fixed. You come from being fixed. The only thing left to do is to go help the guy with the ashtrays, you know. I mean, that's all that's left. And so, you know, I just want to say that, you know, it's the love that I give that heals me. That's what heals me. And right now, I don't have Parkinson's. And you forgot I had it, too. Have a fun time. Thank you. Thank you for my life.